Alright, hello again. This is Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College. I've been going through the PowerPoint presentations for the Muroc MySQL book. Now, here's where we come to our first fork in the road, so to speak, because Chapter 5 in the version or Edition 2 book, How to Insert, Update, and Delete Data, is Chapter 7 in the version 1. So even though this says Chapter 7, just pretend that it says Chapter 5. In fact, I guess I could manually come up there and try to change it. All right. Just so it looked the way that we want it to look. So we'll take it from there. Again, as far as I can tell, most everything that's in here is set up the same as far as these things in here between the two different editions of the book. So this is very short. There are a total of 17 slides. All right, and here's number 1: how to insert, update, and delete data. So our objectives: create a copy of a table that can be used for testing insert, update, and delete statements. Okay. Number 2, given the specifications for an action that modifies data, code the appropriate insert, update, and delete statements for doing the action. Next, describe MySQL's default behavior when you execute an insert, update, or delete. Followed by explain how to handle null values and defaults when coding inserts and updates. So the first thing that they talk about in here is how to use the create table as. All right, so let's try this. Okay, you've already seen what I've shown you before, and that is that I've got this table. So right now, if I show tables, let me knock this down a ways here. I think this will make it easier for you to read. So show tables, and you see all I have is quotes. So I'm going to create table quotes copy as select star from quotes. All right, so you can see what that did. That created and it copied everything. Okay, except now when I do it, when I show tables, okay, there's quotes and quotes copy. But if I describe quotes, this was our original table, you can see what it looks like. Now if I describe quotes copy, okay, what you might notice is the primary key is gone. All right, and any semblance of the primary key is gone. All right, so in other words, it still has the data. So if I go back and run the query, if I select, and I'm not going to select everything because remember the quote is really big. So if I select quote ID, source, favorite, and date entered. So I'll do everything, you know, there from, let's do it first from quotes, from the original. There's what we get. All right, so now let's do it from quotes copy. And what you're going to notice is virtually they'll look the same. Okay, so here they are. The difference is these are automatically set up, so if I add a new record into here, if I add a new record into quotes, I don't have to put a number in there. It'll automatically be put in there for me. In here, it's not the case because this is not an auto increment field. All right, but what that did show you was the way that you can create a copy of a table. Now, we've created everything, but we could have put a where statement in there as they show right here if we wanted to only, you know, let's say that I only wanted the quotes that started with A. And we looked at that before. So there's a lot of different ways that this could be done. So we can add tables. We can do all sorts of stuff if we want to do that. And this is what they talk about here in the warnings. When you use create table as, only the column definitions and data are copied. Primary keys, foreign keys, indexes, etc. are not included in the new table. And I just showed you that. If I didn't want the table anymore, I'd say drop table. Now, key thing to realize here is when we created that, I'm just going to go back up a little bit here, move this up. Let's knock this back down in size again. All right. And what I want to show you is what I used to create that table. All right. I used a DDL, a data definition language statement. Remember, we have 3 DDL statements: create, alter, and drop. All right. This was create. When you use create, or when you use alter, or when you use drop, you have to tell the type of database object you're working with. So I didn't want to just say create, I wanted to say create table. If I left the word table off of there, so if I tried doing this again, I'm going to get an error. And the error is not going to be because quotes copy already exists. I'm going to get an error in my syntax because after create, I have to tell it the type of database object I wanted to create. And in that case, I did not do so. All right, so let's insert some data into this. So it's insert into the name of the table, the column list, the values. Okay? So I'm not going to use their example here. All right? But I will go in and insert first a single row, then I'll insert a single row without using the name of the without using the name of the fields, and then I'll do it again with the name of the fields. Okay? So remember, the table we're using, if we describe quotes copy, those are our fields, that's what's in there. All right, so I want to insert into quotes copy values, and I think that's all inside of parentheses right here. Whoops, and I made a mistake. Oh boy. I'm going to get an error message. That's fine. All right, let's try it again. Insert into quotes copy values. All right, and I'm just going to put in values. So let's say that I have 17 quotes in there. I'm going to put in 100. That's going to be my quote ID. The quote is it ain't over till it's over. All right, the source is Yogi Berra. The favorite will be 1 for yes, and the date entered I'll put now in there like this. All right, I'll put in my paren, and it put it in. All right, so if I go back and I do my select of all those fields that I selected before, right here, notice what's in there is record 100. Okay, so it worked just fine. Now the other way that I can do that is I can insert again into quotes values. All right, but before I say values, I can put in here, I can put in the name of all my fields. So quote ID, source, favorite, and date. Oh, I didn't put the quote in. Quote, source, favorite, and date entered. All right, I think I'm doing this correctly. Let's go back and double check, because if I'm not, I'm just going to get an error message. It looks like it. So I just did one like this. Now I'm doing one like this. Now I come in and I say values. And again, in parentheses, we'll make this 101. The quote will be I am bigger than God. And of course that was from John Lennon. We won't make that a favorite, and we'll just put the current date and time in there. All right, end this, and let's again do our select statement and see if that one went in. And there they both are. So I want to show you one more time on here. Here's the way we entered the first one. We said insert, oops, wish I wouldn't have done that. Insert into quotes, copy. And then we said, oh, this was the second one, I guess. So if we just remove that line, and we come in here and say values, that's one way that we can set this up. And I can put the paren right here too. Now I'm going to get an error message because I already have, actually in this one I won't. That's what's really bad about this. Notice if I leave that as a 1 there, and I'll change the quote here. All right. I am the walrus. Okay. And boom. Notice how it went in okay. And now if I go back to my select statement, I've got two 101s. That would not have happened in the first one. All right? Because we had put in there as a primary key, right? As a primary key, we had put in there the quote ID. We'll talk about how to alter the table again later. Okay? So that was the first one. Let's go back and look at how we did the other one. So that was insert into quotes, copy, values, and then we just put them in without saying what the field names were. Okay, and I can even put this same one in again without an error because again, we do not have in here a primary key setup. Okay? All right. We can insert multiple rows at the same time. Now I can go through another example of that, but hopefully looking at this, it just makes sense to you. All right? Because all I do is I do the first one, put a comma, then the second one, and each one of them are in their own set of parentheses. Okay? All right. Now you'll notice in this case, this is a very good example on the slide right here. We have 3 fields in our color sample table. The first one is an auto increment field, and since it's auto increment, we do not have to put in anything for it. We can just leave the primary key out. And the second one is the color number. Notice it defaults to 0. In this case, this will go in there. The color ID will be, let's say that's the first record. Then the color ID will be 1, the number will be 0, and the name will be, or I'm sorry, the number will be 6, and this is going to have a problem. All right, because there's no name. And I guess we can leave that null according to this. So imagine that we're putting in here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 records. All right, and previously it's empty. So the first one will go in. The ID will be 1. All right, it'll grab it because it's auto increment. The color number will be 606, and the color name will be null. The second one will go in, and the color ID will be 2. The color number will be 0, and the color name will be yellow. The third one will go in, and even though they said default here, this will go in as a 3. That'll again be a 0, and that'll be orange. Then the fourth record, that'll be 4. The number will be 808, and the color name will be null. And the fifth one will take all basically of our defaults, so it'll go in as 5 for the color ID. It'll go in as 0 for the color number, and it'll go in as null for the color name. All right, just to show you that you can put all that stuff in there. And there it is. always a good test for me and for you to go back, look at these, write down even on a piece of paper what you think they'll be, and then switch over. I mean, anybody can just sit there and say, okay, that's going to be this, that's going to be this, but to be able to do them yourselves, okay? Now, this is on subqueries, and we're going to hit on subqueries in, what is that, around Chapter 7? Yes. All right, so we will talk about subqueries in Chapter 7, but a subquery is a query within a query. So really what's going to happen here is this select is done first, and then the result set is used as the input into this insert into invoice archive. So basically it's copying everything from the invoices table where the invoice total minus the payment total minus the credit total equals 0. So it sounds like somebody who owes no money. All right. And they show how you can do that with a list of columns also. There's a lot of ways you can do the same thing. All right, let's talk about the update statement. Okay. Well, let's say here, and I'm not even sure to be honest with you, but if you look at what we did before, you notice I have Yogi Berra in here, right? And let's say that Berra doesn't have an H on the end, okay? So I can say update. There's different ways I can do this, but I can say update quotes copy. Set name equal Yogi, B-E-R-R-A, set name equal that, where quote ID equal 100. It says unknown column name. Okay. Oh, that was source. That was my error. Update quotes copy. Set not name, set source. That should be not name. Set source equal to Yogi Berra, where ID, quote ID equal 100. Okay, and it says that it changed 2 of them. So let's select again. And there's Yogi Berra, and there's Yogi Berra. And you might say, well, you just put that one in. No, that's 1942, and this is 1948. All right, somehow these got put in out of order. But the point is, notice that both Yogi Berras changed. All right, let's take a look at some of the rest of it, the stuff that's in here. All right. Let's say for Bill Gates, we wanted to make that one a favorite. Now it is a favorite. How about Muhammad Ali? We want to make that one a favorite, and it's not a favorite. Okay? So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to again update quotes copy. Set favorites. Is it favorite or favorites? Favorite equal 1. Now there's different ways I can do this. I can say where, since I can look through there, there's only one Muhammad Ali, so I can say where quote ID equal 10, or I can say where source equal Muhammad Ali. All right, I could do it either one of those ways. The safest way is to always use the primary key. Since that's 10, I'm going to do that where quote ID equal 10. All right, and it always tells you what it found and what it changed. So if I come back here and run my select again, now let's look at Muhammad Ali, and you'll notice that Muhammad Ali's quote is now a favorite. Okay, I can also come in and I can change multiple things at the same time. So even though this isn't the case, I'm going to pretend for a second John Lennon's name is J-O-N. So I'm going to update quotes copy, and I'm going to set source equal to John Lennon, comma, and I don't have to line it up, but I could if I wanted to, I guess, and favorite equal to 1, where source is equal to John Lennon. So take a look at that. Update quotes copy, set source equal to John Lennon, J-O-N, and also set the favorite equal to 1, where source equal John, J-O-H-N Lennon. So that should change these two, it should change the spelling, and on both these it should change the favorite, all right, to 1. So let's look and see if that indeed happened. So there's John, J-O-N, J-O-N, and both of them have been changed to 1. Okay? All right. Now, you'll notice here when you look at this, it says by default, SQL Workbench runs in safe mode. What that means is if you try to delete everything, you'll get a warning. Okay? I don't believe there's a safe mode that if you try doing it from, if you try to remove everything, if you try doing a delete statement, it's going to remove everything. Okay? It's very important that you realize, and let me just mention two things to you. Let me go back to where we were here. First of all, if you're going to go and make, if I knew that maybe, let's just say in here, I had dozens of quotes from John Lennon, okay? And I thought I spelled his name wrong every time, but I wasn't even sure. Maybe sometimes it's J-O-N, sometimes it's J-O-N, maybe sometimes it's J Lennon or whatever, all right? I could always come in here and I could say select source from just the source from quotes copy where source equals, if I wasn't sure, I could just say J %. Oh, I'm sorry. It shouldn't be source equal, it should be source like. And there I see them. Bottom line is this. Before you do an update or before you do a delete, you should always, before you do them, you should always do a select statement to make sure that what you're about to update or what you're about to delete is what you mean to update or what you mean to delete. All right. So when you delete, if you don't put a where in there, you remove everything. That's typically not what you want to have happen. All right? So, if I come in here and I say this, now think about this. Let's pretend for a second that instead of what we have here, let's pretend this was an employee. All right, this was an employee table. And I said this, update employees. I'm not going to actually run this because I get an error message. Update employees, set rate equal to rate times 1 point. Let's say I want to give a 10% raise where department equals accounting. Again, I'm going to get an error here because I don't have that. Okay, it doesn't exist. But if I mean to run this query, but instead I type in this and I don't put in another line, I don't put in the where, now I've given every employee a 10% raise. All right, and much the same, if I come through here now and I say delete from employees, let's say I'm not going to have an accounting department anymore for whatever reason, where department equals accounting. All right, that's going to remove, again, I'm getting these errors because I don't actually have this table. But if I do this, Now that's going to it's going to go in and remove everybody in my accounting department. But if I just do this, that removes everything from the table. So if I'm done with this quotes copy and I don't want it anymore, I can say, if I want, delete from quotes copy. And you notice 21 rows were affected. Now if I select star from quotes copy, it's empty. All right? And unlike what they just said in Workbench, you are not prompted first to say, are you sure you wanted to do that? The system supposes that you know what the heck you're doing. All right? And that's it for this particular chapter. So I will be back, even though I changed that to a 5, so I'm just not even going to save this. But for the next chapter that I want to go over, which will be my last one today, will be Chapter 6. And Chapter 6 is on how to code summary queries. And that, see, was the old Chapter 5. Okay, so I'm going to make that Chapter 6. And I will be back with that very shortly.